Thanks, Patricia. Okay. Yeah, so hi everyone. I'm a final year PhD student at the National Drug and Alcohol Research Centre, so I'm just presenting my research findings, and also I'll give you a brief overview of where to next based on the research that I've done. Okay, so just looking at smoking rates by socio-economic status in Australia, you can see that people from smokers from the highest SES backgrounds are quitting, whereas those from the lowest SES backgrounds are not. It's remaining basically the same. And so that's where my research is focused, is targeting this population group that doesn't seem to be quitting. And so we need to reconsider current quit approaches, because traditional smoking cessation services and supports, such as pharmacotherapies, including nicotine replacement therapy, aren't helping this population group. And this is despite in Australia we've got really strict tobacco control policies, and the National Drug Strategy Household Survey data found recently that there's been no change in Australian smoking rates despite these prolonged tax increases, plain packaging, and there's really strict rules around smoking in public. And so just looking at the research output in Australia, looking at the intervention research, there isn't an awful lot that's being done, focusing on disadvantaged population groups, and for the research that is being done, there's no effect, so more needs to be done. So just by way of background, I initially started at the National Drug and Alcohol Research Centre project managing this RCT, and we had 1,047 participants. We overcame some of the barriers by providing free nicotine replacement therapy, motivational interviewing, and only 3.3% of the sample were biochemically verified quit at 6 months. And so at the end of that trial, it was pretty depressing, but then I was left with more questions than answers, and that's why I enrolled in a PhD. And so that led me to conduct some qualitative interviews with participants from that previous trial, and so it has been published. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about that. So I was able to recruit, 5 ex-smokers and 19 smokers. I did a mix of focus groups and in-depth interviews. I did a thematic analysis, and while it was deductive, there were some emergent themes that came out, and that was inductively. And so I guess the main findings from the qualitative research was that smokers are experiencing, or the ones that I spoke to, smoker-related stigma, and so that was negatively impacting treatment-seeking behaviours. So the stigma was just from the general public, from calling quitline services, and just it's in a way making them bond together, because among smokers, I guess they all understand each other and they don't feel like they're being judged. But I guess it's quite my experience in Australia, around where I live. If you see someone smoke, people really look down on them, and it's not nice. There was also positive smoker identity, which functioned as a barrier to cessation, and so that's because most people, they've been smokers longer than they've been not smoking, and so they really hold on to that identity. Everyone wanted alternative support services, because quitline, while it does function to help some smokers, I'm not sure if it's really meeting the needs of disadvantaged smokers. And 90% of the sample in the previous RCT used mobile phones, so we did lots of reminders. We had an 85% retention rate, and so I spoke to them about using alternative services such as text messaging, smartphone apps. I did discuss vaporised nicotine products, and the legal status in Australia is it's quite wishy-washy depending on state, but in New South Wales alone, it's illegal to have liquid nicotine without a prescription. And so talking about using an e-cigarette, people were just saying that they wouldn't risk it. It's must be unsafe if it's illegal, therefore they will continue to smoke. So that was a little bit, I wasn't expecting that finding, to be honest. And so these are just some quotes from participants. You can really see in the green one the stigma that someone experienced. So they were walking along the footpath with a cigarette, talking on their phone, and then someone sitting at a restaurant yelled at them that you can't smoke where food is being served. Which is quite full on if you're just walking down the street and people feel okay to yell at you. So then concurrently I was doing the qualitative work, but then I also did a systematic review and meta-analysis on technology-based interventions that targeted disadvantaged smokers, just to see, I guess, how I can inform future research. Also, the World Health Organization Tobacco-Free Initiative has identified mHealth as a cost-effective, scalable and sustainable platform. And so I guess it was pretty dire when I got my results. So of 6,345 articles that I identified, only 13 met inclusion criteria. And of the 13, only one used mobile phone text messaging, and only one study was methodologically rigorous. So I guess there's a lot of room to move in this space. And so my research has actually informed a text messaging intervention, which we're aiming to pilot at the end of this year. And so, yeah, these are just some points about mobile phone technology. I guess the main point that came out of the qualitative research was that it could be interactive, 24/7 support in real time, and it would complement existing services. I guess I have no conflicts of interest. These are the acknowledgements. But I will just talk a little bit about the research that the Tobacco Research Group is doing at NDARC. So while I am still a PhD student, I have taken on a postdoc leading this project. And so we are adding a vaporised nicotine product to standard behavioural treatment for low SES smokers, and it's a randomised controlled trial. So I'm currently in the process of piloting different devices because most low SES smokers, particularly in New South Wales, are naive to using e-cigarettes. And so I've identified 3 products because it needs to all meet regulation requirements. We will be recruiting close to 900 participants. They will be randomised, and we will be following them up for 7 months. So I'm really excited to get the findings of this trial because it will help policy be informed by evidence-based research. So I think that's the way forward for particularly New South Wales Health. There's also another trial that's being conducted where it's looking at cytosine versus Veronica for smoking cessation. So that trial is currently underway and it's in active recruitment. So those findings will also be really important for policy and practice. And then we've also got another RCT where we're looking at smoking relapse prevention among ex-prisoners in the Northern Territory, and that's predominantly Indigenous prisoners just because of the state that it's in. And so I think that's where I end. Thank you.